Check, check. Hey, how's it going? Thank you for doing this interview with me. I really do appreciate it. Yeah. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. Please introduce yourself. Tell me what college you went to, what did you study, and then how long did you go to school for?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for taking the time. And hopefully, this interview can make some sort of impact on somebody or just some more insight information on kind of what I've gone through in my college experience.
Yeah.
I went to Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona, the Sun Devils. Um, and you said,
How
what did
long?
I study? How long I
Yeah,
was there?
yeah.
So I did my bachelor's and my master's there. So I was there for a total of 6.5 years for school.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, what did you study at ASU?
So I studied for my bachelor's exercise science and nutrition. Um, and then I got my master's in exercise science with an emphasis in health promotion.
I see. And why did you choose those majors?
I think what really interests me was going to school as an athlete. I wanted to know more about my body and kind of the different things that make up, you know, what we do every day with our bodies, the different systems in the body, the way they relate to science and exercise specifically, as well as knowing how we can promote positive health um, through knowing our body and knowing, you know, different attributes to everyday physical fitness, everyday nutrition, just overall healthy lifestyle habits. So that's really what started it. Initially, I was very interested too in, just going through a series of injuries and kind of what you can do to prevent that, how you can help other people get knowledgeable of that. It was kind of what geared me towards to decide to study that.
I see. I see. And so, talk about being a student athlete. Tell us your approach in high school, choosing between different colleges. Like, did you have a huge list of colleges because you were a student athlete?
No, not really. I mean, honestly, I grew up playing sports, loved playing different sports. I actually played lacrosse starting in fifth grade through high school, and that was something that I was pretty good at. I always was interested in running because my mom was a big runner, and she ran, for a big part of her life. Got me into it at a young age doing local 5Ks. So going into high school, I've always enjoyed running. From elementary club to middle school and going to high school. So I had played lacrosse my first 2 years. I actually didn't even run cross country or track until my sophomore year. I ran cross country, but my freshman year I actually played football, which was
Wait,
funny because
wait,
my
wait,
dad
what?
actually played football in college. So I mean, I've always been interested in the sport, but never had this size. And it kind of was apparent when I played his freshman year. It wasn't what I expected to be. I had the athletic ability, but I wasn't big enough. I couldn't do what I needed to do to be successful in that specific sport.
Yeah,
So anyway, really, I ran cross country my sophomore year, and I really came in. I've always embraced challenges. So when I came in initially, I wanted to run with the top group. I wanted to prove that I could run with anybody, and I'd been competing in different races. Since I was a kid, it's always like, if you're going to run, try to finish first, try to do what you can. So yeah, at the beginning of that sophomore year, to the end of that, I kind of proved that I could run at the varsity level. But yeah, like I said, I continued to play lacrosse until my junior year.
hmm
And then, our high school coach, Coach Clemens, he was kind of like, hey, if you could take this seriously, and run year round, um, even though lacrosse is still a good conditioning sport, you're not continuing to practice running, and it's taking some out of your training. I really think that you can, maybe run at the next level. So, I made that decision my junior year to run track, and had some success junior year as well during cross country. So I said, maybe it is a possibility. But really at that point, I didn't really have many offers, or, knew especially that I'd be able to compete at the highest collegiate level. Like at that point, my junior year, I didn't really think about that. And then beginning my senior year, cross country went all right. I didn't necessarily run as fast as I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I did gain some interest from a few schools. Growing up in California, I don't know, I was always appealed by going to a UC school. That was something I really wanted to do, for the academic part of it. And then, having some success running made it a possibility that maybe I could go to one of these UC schools with, my grades were pretty good, but then if I can get in as an athlete, then I would for sure make sure that I get in, because it's not the easiest schools to get into. So anyway, I really wasn't looking at too many schools. I was kind of looking at, University of Santa Barbara,
Nice.
UCSB, great school. It was right on the beach. UC school,
Yeah.
great place. A lot of interest kind of in the fields and majors that I was looking at. I was looking at UCLA for a short time, and then it just didn't really work out. They didn't really have a spot on the team for me. And then Arizona State kind of came as well, and I kind of was just interested in them, interested in their team. I'd sent in an application letter and I was already accepted. So I said, why not talk to the coach and see, if they have any room on their team, if they had any interest in me.
So you went out of your way to talk to the coach after you sent in your application. So that's how
Yeah, so
you found them.
that one was very interesting, because UCSB was very interested in me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
They
I
were like
mean,
sending you letters and stuff, or?
yeah. So they were really interested. They came and watched me run during track my senior year, like multiple times. They wanted me to come. And then, yeah, Arizona State was more of a thing where I got accepted, and I said, you know what, why don't I reach out to the coach and just see what they think of me? And from there, the coach was like, hey, this guy, is decent. Like, we'll bring you on an official visit. And then, the rest is kind of history. Kind of went from there. It wasn't a thing like they were recruiting me the whole time or anything like that. So
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get into your experience as a student athlete at ASU. But what was ASU like? Like, tell me about your experience at ASU and like kind of like the school in general, like and the place too, because you're going from California to Arizona. So was it like two completely different places?
in a way, I mean, it's a little different, but honestly, Tempe, where Arizona State is it's just a great city, and it's right on the lake. There's a lake called Tempe Town Lake.
Ooh.
There's lots of trails. There's a lot of biking. A lot of desert trails, a lot of stuff to do. So obviously there's no beach. It's a little bit different, but in the same way, it's very similar to California as well. At least Tempe is. So that was kind of the thing. When I went out there for a visit, I was pretty open-minded, just said, hey, let's just see what it is. And I kind of, fell in love with the place that it was, and
Yeah.
throughout the, time I spent there, I spent 8 years in Arizona, it really felt like a second home.
Yeah.
And really it's a great place. There's a lot of stuff to do. Everybody thinks it's just this hot desert place, and there's 4 or 5 months out of the year where it's pretty warm, but I always tell people it's like anything else. Like, you're not going to spend all your time outside every day anyway. So
Yeah, that's true.
you kind of got to look at it like that and say, sure, like if you're in a place like California, you probably could spend most days of the year outside. But it's a pretty awesome place. So
Nice. So Now, what was your experience like being a student athlete at ASU?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, ASU's in the Pac-12. Pac-12 for at least for running is very competitive conference. They had a lot of success, a lot of athletes that have gone on to the Olympics. They've gone on to win some medals. So it's very competitive. And Arizona State, they do what they can to compete in the Pac-12.
Hmm.
So ever changing. ASU is one of the biggest, universities in the entire country. So they have a certain amount of funding for specific sports. When we're in a small market sport, though, like running, obviously it's
Yeah.
not the same as something like football or basketball. We're not bringing in revenue like they are. But on top of that, some of these student athlete facilities are shared by all the sports. So one of the greatest things that we had was kind of like an athletic center. And basically what that is, we had a kind of a study area. We had a bunch of
Yeah.
different computers that we can use. We have access to tutors if we need them. We have access to, like counselors for whether it's setting up your school or you need something related to academics. And we also have resources where if maybe it's maybe you're struggling mentally with running,
Hmm.
we have different resources where we can talk to somebody like
Oh, really?
yeah. So I mean, I even did that after my second year there. I took some things and said, I don't know if I'm overthinking it. I'm not
Yeah.
finishing races the way I want to. And sometimes sitting down with somebody, a professional like that, can make a huge
Yeah.
difference.
Are they like
Um,
are they like some kind of therapist, or are they just some kind of like a mental coach?
yeah, it's kind of like mental counsel. I don't know the specific.
Like position?
Yeah, but it's definitely like it's like a session. You're talking to somebody, and they're giving you some pointers, some things to try. Different
Yeah.
things that you can do to kind of get past whatever you're struggling with.
Hmm.
Um,
And how effective was that? Was that?
Yeah, I think I've always been a person where the more knowledge I can get,
Hmm.
like the more things that you look at something a different way, it could make a huge difference. So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
always open to listening, and I think some of it did make a difference when you really put it in perspective and you step away and you see a different someone who's not in that environment every day, and they said, well, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely took it away. I do think one of the biggest differences at the Division I level is probably when it comes to recovery. I'd say,
Mm.
we had a um, full staff
You guys
like
had
we had
you
like
guys had
trainers.
okay,
So
trainers, like strength
so
coaches
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Mhm. So we had like a
Cool.
specific trainer that was just dedicated to our sport, for cross country and track.
Uh huh.
So, during the cross country season, you come in, you have some sort of injury, something's tight, something's sore, you can go in and, you know, get, get the treatment that you need, sign up for a
Yeah.
time. Um, we had different, we'd get different drills and stuff from the trainers, if your balance isn't good, if your ankle mobility isn't good, um, you know,
How were the trainers? Were they pretty cool? Like
yeah,
they were pretty flexible.
the trainers were great. I mean, we had a few different ones in the time that I was there, and all of them had their different knowledge from different places. And
Hmm.
but I took sports medicine in high school, and that was something that kind of gave me an interest in kind of what I studied as well. And
Yeah.
um, you know, it's just some of the technology and the recovery tools that we had. I think that's really what takes it to the next level. But at the same time, when you're going to compete at that level, you need that type of treatment,
Hmm.
just because of the wear and tear you're putting on your body.
Yeah.
So having an ice tub, having
Yeah.
different compression things that we have at our disposal to use makes a big difference. But the biggest thing is just I think the structure, kind of that we had, it's very like you're a student first, but you're setting up your schedule between, practice, class, or, practice, class, strength training, recovery, maybe a second run, and
Yeah.
then, you're restarting that process, and depending on what type of week it is, whether you're preparing for a race, it's going to look different. But,
Mhm.
having those trainers, having strength coaches to guide us through, different strength and conditioning,
Yeah.
and then ultimately having, our two or three coaches to kind of put us through a daily routine. It's definitely the next level
Yeah.
when it comes to training and competing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. You definitely have like a lot of resources at that level because like at my school, we just like had our head coach and maybe like a couple trainers and but we were at NAI at first, but later on we became D2 and that's when we started seeing like a little bit more resources. But so it's really cool that ASU provides a lot of those resources, especially like a mental coach. Like I think that's like it's kind of a game changer in a way.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, definitely can be. So,
yeah, but I really wanted to ask you about like your schedule. So like, how much time did you put into like your training, and then like doing your academics and all that stuff? Like I'm kind of like I want you to give us like a picture of like your schedule of what it was like at
okay.
ASU.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, being a student athlete is like having a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
You're really spending a majority of your time into balancing academics and being trying to compete at this level. So,
Yeah,
I mean, really the schedule every week, if say it's a race week, you're really trying to put time into your schoolwork so that you're not worrying about that when you're traveling. Because, we travel to some of these meets, 2 days before. So it's making sure that you're taking care of that schoolwork first, but ultimately setting you up for success because you're there to compete.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, like a sample day, it's like we wake up and depending on the time of year in Arizona, you have to get up early to go run. So, I mean, there's some days where we're meeting at, 4:35, depending on
ooh,
how, if it's a long run day, we're meeting at 4:30 at the
yeah,
hottest time of the year. Um, but it's all dependent too. So anyway, basic days you wake up, we meet at the track or wherever to go for a run. There's a lot of different locations around Tempe for great running, depending on
mm-hmm.
if you're going to do hills, if you're going to do flat canal running, if you're going to do grass running at local park, if you're going to
Yeah,
run at the track, just depending on what type of day it is. But we'll wake up, we'll go run, and then we'll spend probably 30 minutes after showing up, doing that pre stretch routine, dynamic, um, getting yourself warmed up. And then after the run, we spend 30 to 45 minutes, doing stretching, doing different core,
mm-hmm.
doing, maybe, you know, hurdle drills or, sand pit walks for ankle mobility or, planks or, just dependent on the different types of recovery tools or what we're trying to gain out of that day. But
Yeah.
each day had a purpose, whether it's a workout day, a recovery day, or a long run day. Um,
And so
you're trying
this
to get
is
that most out of that.
I see, and this is all in the morning, right?
Yeah, this is all in the morning. So depending on the days too, we typically, if it's a race week, we're still going to get in, at least one workout with the strength coach for
Mm-hmm.
lifting. And that lifting can vary. Some days we're trying to just do, different core things, different things. But some days we're doing squats, we're doing weighted lunges, we're doing, you know, um, different things just to, switch up to get overall a body workout, but then again,
Yeah.
it's specific to running and specific to that. So, what type of strength do we need? What type of, muscle groups do we need to work on that'll help us be successful and,
Mm-hmm.
get stronger, so, if it's a regular week, we're doing 2 or 3 workouts in the weight room.
Yeah.
Um, so those days we might not, like I said, each day had a purpose. So we might not do hurdle drills or, jump rope running or something like that on those days because we're going specifically to do a strength routine. Um, and then after all that's done, that's a big block in the morning where, that's a 3-hour time block. that
Yeah.
you start your day with. So
Uh-huh.
typically you do that and then you come back, sometimes I would go straight to um, the training room after that,
Mhm.
and if I'm sore, if I need something, if I need an ice bath, if I want to use the Normatec, which is like a compression recovery tool,
Yeah.
um, you know, if I have something nagging me, when I was in college, I had a lower back um, kind of injury. I had Achilles injury. I had two stress fractures in my foot. So
Oh,
depending on
nice.
what you're doing, you gotta, either improve your mobility if it's something with the foot, you gotta
Yeah.
do those drills to get that strength back, get you, recovered from that injury.
Mhm.
Um, or just simply, getting your body back to where it needs to be so you're ready for the next day.
Yeah.
But after that, then it's, you put your schoolwork is pretty much in the middle of the day.
Okay.
Any other college schedule, it varies. Some days, you have a lot of, 3 or 4 classes. Some days you might only have one, it just depends. Really, I try to front load my week with classes because I knew I'd be missing some classes, for meets later in the week. So that's typically what a lot of athletes do.
Mhm.
Um,
That's a good strategy right there. Because I knew
yeah.
some teammates who were like taking classes on Friday. I'm like, why?
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
do that.
no, definitely. I mean, you don't want to be, you know, it's not fun to have to take a test early or, I never had to do it, but bring a test on the road or something, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just extra stress that you're putting on yourself when you're trying to, focus on
Great.
athletics.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
so typically, just depending, I mean, typically class in the middle of the day.
mhm.
And then afternoon, I mean, if you have time for a nap, that's always great. But
Yeah.
you might, a lot of times I'll go for a second run, depending on what day of the week it is, um, and then or go and recover the training room in the afternoon after classes if I need to, and maybe go to the student athlete, study center and study there. If it's important, if I need to print something, if I need to do something where I need to just be locked in there.
Yeah.
And then, you go home and, nutrition's a big part of it at night, getting your schoolwork done.
Yeah.
Um,
I was just gonna ask you about food. Like, what did you like? You had a play. You had like an apartment where you like made your own food, and then at the at your like athlete center, did they give you guys food there too?
I mean, we had resources to like, Powerade and, Muscle Milk and, some recovery bars and stuff like that.
Okay.
We'd have some days where we'd get breakfast or, um, depending on the day. But mostly it's, another big part, awesome tool that we had at ASU was we had a nutritionist that we could work with
Mhm.
too. So,
That's
you
nice.
can go in there and she can help you set up your diet. She can say, hey, based off what information we have, it looks like you're not getting enough of this, enough of that. Um,
Hey, that's pretty
you
nice.
know, we did have like, we would do a physical at the beginning of the year with, an ASU like team doctor basically.
Uh huh.
That this doctor would work with all the sports.
Oh, okay.
But they would, diagnose things, I mean, if you had an injury, you do that physical at the beginning of the year and you go through a series of questions of, hey, it looks like this is low. Maybe, talking to the nutritionist about, different vitamins or different, foods that you need to, make yourself, stay healthier or what else
Yeah.
it is. But yeah, I mean, I think college too was a big, everybody goes to college and it's a new thing where, you kind of have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
And being in that environment, I can tell you there's a big difference when, you eat like crap and you eat good, you can
That's
feel
true.
that, I mean, if you're putting that many miles on your body and, you're trying to compete, you can't just say, hey, I'm just going to have, hot dogs or Taco Bell or something for dinner. I mean, you gotta be smart about it,
Yeah.
So I
Well,
definitely got into cooking when I went to college. So
that's
I
good.
enjoy cooking. I still do today. So,
That's good. I think that's a good
yeah,
skill
I
to
mean,
to learn.
Yeah, I know.
But so you're talking about all these like injuries and talking about all these miles. Like, how many miles were you running, like on average per week during the middle of the season?
Yeah, I mean, big part of running cross country and track is you're running pretty much year round. You might
Yeah,
take a week after a season ends, but it's on to the next season, and that build up is kind of when you're running. You're kind of building up, and then you're running basically. 2 months before the season is really when you're running the most.
mm,
When you get into the season, the first couple of weeks of the season, you're running, a lot as well. But you're kind of trying to peak at the right time, trying to get in the right shape at the right time.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, in high school, I mean, you and me were in the same program.
yeah,
We ran some miles. I can't really say how many because we didn't really at the time have a structured thing of where we're keeping track. We're more running for time.
yeah,
Um, but I'd say in high school we probably ran maybe 60 miles a week.
yeah. I can say that. Yeah,
Um, so really, when I went to ASU, that was kind of the first big difference that I saw going to the next level was the mileage that I was running. So starting out at that 60 miles, working with the coach to kind of build up more.
yeah.
Um, my freshman year, I probably got into the 80s, maybe a 90-mile week. Um,
Miles.
but ultimately for me, I got that first stress fracture my first year, my freshman year.
Really?
And it was because I tried to ramp up those miles. I pushed myself too hard
Yeah.
because I wanted to compete. I wanted to make an instant impact,
Mhm.
um, and ultimately I was just pushing myself too much. But coming back from that, I did the right tools. I worked with the trainers to come up with like daily things that I could do to strengthen, you know, my mobility
Yeah.
between ankles, knees, hips. I really picked up a lot of different stretching, morning routine. I wake up 30 minutes before I need to leave just so I can do these things every single day just to make sure
Oh
that
man.
I would be healthy, so I could run these
Yeah.
miles. So,
You're really determined. What? I mean, what were your
but
times? Like, what was your place on the team? What was your place on the team?
yeah, I mean, it definitely changed. I mean, even the mileage. When I came back my sophomore year,
Hmm.
um, you know, that year, I mean, my highest mileage got up to 110 miles a week. So, you know, we had a running group. I stayed my sophomore summer, and we had 4 guys on the team, and we wake up every morning, and we were all over 100 miles for 6 weeks straight. Um, and that was the longest
Wow, man.
streak that I've ever had. But that was kind of in the peak, fitness that when I was at ASU. But
Huh.
that was also a big thing when I went to ASU. I mentioned earlier that I was really recruited by UCSB, and
Yeah.
it came down to them and ASU ultimately at the end of the day. But when I took the visit there to ASU, I knew that there were some guys that had made it to nationals, some guys that had run really fast, who had
Yeah.
improved since their freshman year, and had gotten a lot better. Um, and that was the biggest difference because I wanted to come in and I wanted to learn from some of these guys. I wanted people that were faster than me at the time to challenge me to be better.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if I would have gone to UCSB, there was only like one person on the team that would have been better than me my freshman year. And
Really?
with the type of mentality that I think I had, I probably would have been
Yeah.
better than him after 1 year being there. So then that kind of
Yeah.
makes it tough. Um, so yeah, I mean, ultimately when I was a freshman, I was just trying to get in the mix. I just wanted to travel. I wanted to compete, as a true freshman.
Yeah.
Um, and I did get hurt, so that kind of affected me.
Hmm.
But I ultimately came back from that injury at the end of cross country, and I was running the workouts with the top group of 5 guys. Um, and really, almost the coach almost ran me at the Pac-12 championship meet that year, but we ultimately talked about it, and it wasn't the right decision for my eligibility to just waste a year running, potentially only 2 races. So,
Yeah.
um, but I came out that track season um, kind of with some momentum, and ended up running, 14:30 in the 5K. Um, and then like 358 in the 1500. So
Okay.
I definitely shown some improvements from my college senior year, which I was kind of hurt anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but it was good momentum going into that summer, knowing that I could come back the next year and I was going to be traveling. I was going to be in that top five. I could make a difference. And that was kind of when I really started to gain some traction, understand, all the tools that I had at my disposal, to really like put myself in the best position to compete at that level. And
Yeah.
my redshirt freshman year, my sophomore year was really when I made big improvements. And
Hmm.
during cross country, I was our third or fourth guy. I ended up being top 20 at the Pac-12 meet, um, and we unfortunately missed going to nationals that year by a few points.
Dang.
Which ASU hadn't made the national meet in a couple of years, so it would have been a big thing for the
Yeah.
program. But yeah, I just continued to improve from there.
Hmm.
Junior year, we had lost a couple key older guys on the team, so I really had to step up into more of a kind of leadership role at that point. Um, and at that point, I was really invested in it. I
Yeah.
had put in a lot of time, a lot of work, and that's the thing about running too. You do these months of training just for one moment where you push yourself a little bit further than you had before.
Yeah.
um, but I don't think there's anything like it. It's just it's something where it's you against yourself every day. And a lot of times you're going to lose, but
Hmm.
you know if you can continue to put your head down and work hard, you will see results eventually. So
That's
yeah,
true.
I
It's
mean,
like, oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say like cross country is definitely like an individual sport, so it's like whatever you put in it is what you're gonna get. You can't really blame on somebody else of like how you run or like there's just like there's no room for excuses.
Yeah, there's really isn't. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the way my career went, unfortunately, like I said earlier, I kind of struggled with a few injuries, but I did have the opportunity. I qualified for nationals as an individual for one season, so that was kind of my biggest achievement.
This was
Unfortunately, that
for
was the
track?
same year. No, for cross country.
Oh, for cross country. Oh, okay.
So for cross country, so I finished eighth at the regional meet. Um,
Gee.
and unfortunately, my the way our team went,
Uh-huh.
we were very close. We were first team out, like I said, my sophomore year. My junior year, we were the second team out of nationals.
Hmm.
Um, and then that year that I qualified, um, I think we were the third or fourth team out. So we were always on the cusp of getting there
Dang, man.
as a team, but we didn't. Um, I was fortunate that I finished high enough that I was an individual that qualified.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, on that day, I had a back injury, and that day at nationals, I couldn't get past it.
Hmm.
Mentally, it
Hmm.
was, I made it bigger than it needed to be, and didn't get the result I wanted to. I mean, I wanted to be top 40. I wanted to be an All-American, obviously, but
Yeah.
it was still, I mean, I wouldn't take anything back. Just to qualify for that meet is an achievement.
Yeah.
Um, So, and on the track, I saw a lot of success as well. I made it to the first, it's regionals or first round of nationals, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But from my sophomore year through my, last year, so 4 years in a row, I made it to that meet, to that level.
That's pretty
Um,
good.
and
And
unfortunately,
what event?
it mainly in the 5K.
5K. What was your best
Um,
time in the 5K?
my best time in the 5K is 13:43.
Man, that's fast,
So,
Ryan. What's that mile? What's the mile pace for that?
um, I don't know off the top of my
4:12
head.
or something like that, or something.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but
Yeah. Hey,
um,
man, that's quick.
yeah. So
You,
that
you
wasn't
never
bad.
you never thought about going pro or anything like that after running in college?
I mean, there was a short time, like I said. Unfortunately, I've just been, you know, I've had different injuries, and it just the timing just hasn't worked out. In that year that I ran that 13, 43 was, 2016 or 2015. So it was like right before an Olympic year, and even that race too, I had an Achilles injury that year. Um,
Really?
so, I wasn't 100% when I ran that. And I look back on it and I think I honestly could have ran a little bit faster in that race.
Yeah.
But I said, I have so much more this season. This isn't the best I'm going to run.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, that was the fastest I've ever run. But um, yeah, I mean, having the opportunity to compete with, that level
Hmm.
um, is pretty much as high as it gets, and like you said, until you go pro. Unfortunately, the running community, there's not a lot of money to be made. It's not really a career aspect. It's more of something you do on the side. And going through that experience of being a student athlete, you know, like I said, it's like a full-time job. So if you
Yeah.
really want to put yourself at the top level, and compete to try to, be the best in, the country or compete on a world level, then you really have to make it your full-time job. So it's tough because once you get there, 1340 can be fast, but
Yeah.
if you want to compete on the world level, you got to run close to 13 minutes,
Yeah.
or else you're not going to compete. So
Tough, man. It's tough, man. What are um what are some tips or words of advice you would give to student athletes who want to compete in D1?
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I learned is, a lot of people go to D1 and you're the best, in high school. You're either the
Hmm.
best at your school, best in your state. Um, but, you're starting from scratch, when you get to D1, everybody's the best from where they're coming from or close to
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so the playing field gets a lot more even. And, a lot of people struggle with that when they come in, as a freshman and they're not competing with older people on the team that have been there.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's, you got to come in and you got to make the most of the opportunity and say, hey, you know what? I might not be the best right now, but if I take the tools and the knowledge from, the resources I have, the older people on the team, the coaches, taking a step at a time, then you can get to that level. You can definitely keep going up and, you can compete, to make it to nationals, to try to be an All-American.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, it's all about the little things,
Yeah, that's true.
it really is. If you don't take the time to, recover, make your nutrition important. Um, what my college coach used to say is you got to live the lifestyle, you know, and if you don't live that lifestyle, then you're going to struggle. You're not going to get to where you really can be.
Yeah.
So, running's different because I've always believed that, you can only get to a certain level of physical fitness. And after that, it's all mental.
I see.
You could be just as fit as the guy you stand in the line with next to,
Yeah.
but whoever has the mental edge that day is probably going to do better. So,
Yeah. I like that
uh,
though. That
yeah,
that quote from your coach. Yeah, you
live
gotta
the
live that
lifestyle.
lifestyle. Yeah, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. Now I want to talk about more of outside of school. You graduated, you have your papers. So did you find a job slash like career right outside of college?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely found jobs related to my field.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I found a career based off of the field I was in. Um, but then again, sometimes that just isn't possible. Sometimes a lot of these places are looking for experience and you just don't have that experience, so you have to get that experience
Yeah.
if you're going to make it into a career. I've done different coaching, whether it be high school or personal training coaching, and that's something that I think I'll always kind of be interested in, always try to do.
Yeah.
um, I've kind of been, I've moved around a little bit, so I haven't really found my roots, but that's something in the future that when I know I'm going to be somewhere permanently, I definitely want to, you know, coach cross country or, track, get back into that,
Yeah.
develop something, almost develop my own program. I've gained a lot of knowledge over the years, and something I've always enjoyed is giving that back to, the next generation. Um,
Yeah.
so they can use those tools and be successful, and people who want to compete, specifically in running, they have those tools and knowledge that they need to get better.
Yeah.
Um,
I was gonna ask you about that just because, like, how come you want to, start your own program or be a head coach? I mean, I don't really meet a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, like I want to be a head coach. Like I mean, you kind of like answer that question like with your hard work and like you want to give back to like some of the athletes and kind of teach them the ways of just how to get good and how to practice that good work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is, being a coach too is, I love to compete, period. I'm very
Yeah,
competitive. I don't care if I'm playing Monopoly or if I'm running a race, I mean, I want to try to win. I want to be competitive. So I think
yeah,
coaching is a good way. I have that knowledge, you know, maybe I can't go in and, race or whatnot.
yeah.
But, if I see a group of, people that want to get better
Uh-huh.
and, we can work as a team and we can get better and they can PR, then that's competing, you can
Yeah,
put together a program and try to win, um, while you're giving knowledge to them and they're getting better and, they have a chance to compete at the next level, then I think that's pretty great. So.
I see. Uh, did ASU offer any career resources or any like internship opportunities?
Yeah, so through athletics, we had a lot of um, kind of with the student counseling, we had
Mhm.
different, workshops that they would provide us, whether it's, ASU wide or specific, athlete panels where they would bring in somebody to talk about different careers or different
Yeah,
job opportunities, and they would have those, if you're interested or different
yeah,
fields. And then the specific college I went to, ASU is kind of split up to different colleges based off what you're studying. They would have different career fairs, different opportunities for internships. And
hmm,
I was fortunate, kind of part of my master's program was to work with a faculty member to kind of do an internship,
okay.
um, or a research study. So I ended up doing a research study with the faculty, kind of based off of physical activity, um, in kind of elementary schools,
Oh,
and kind of how the
yeah. Talk
schedule,
about that.
yeah, I mean, so it was kind of the startup of this research project. So I was kind of one of the first students to work with this faculty. So there wasn't a
Okay.
lot of data, but it was more me kind of putting together kind of a program, kind of some materials that we could pass on from year to year,
Yeah.
um, to kind of develop a study based off of kind of physical fitness act like levels in elementary school. And I would go to an elementary school a couple times a week. We kind of worked with them to see kind of how the schedule would affect it, what programs they were doing to increase physical activity. And at that time, we didn't have a lot of what the result factors would be,
Uh huh.
or kind of what we wanted to get out of it. But
Yeah.
basically, I would set up different, PE/recess activities to try to get more people involved.
Hmm.
We kind of worked with the school to set up this kind of parent kind of walk home from school instead
Oh,
of,
really?
riding the bus home. So kind of the local kids, instead of getting on the bus or getting picked up,
Yeah.
we kind of had different parents that would rotate to kind of walk students home so they
How
would
was
get that
that?
physical activity. I mean, I always thought it was interesting. Like I said, they're trying to kind of put together years of this study. So
Huh.
um, they haven't necessarily published anything, but
Yeah.
kind of what we gathered was, that definitely provides a resource for, kids to get more physical activity than they would.
Uh huh.
Um, in the way that, childhood is kind of developing now more towards technology and,
Yeah.
there's not as many opportunities for physical fitness.
Yeah.
Um, for every kid. I mean, there's going to be certain kids that are always going to want to play sports. But then there's going to be those kids that just want to go home and, play video games, or, they're not going to do anything else the rest of the day.
Yeah.
They're just going to stay at home. So this is an opportunity to reach that minimal, physical activity level per day,
Uh-huh.
whether it's, walking to school 15 minutes in the morning and then, having a scheduled recess, and then walking home,
I
so
see.
then it's a way that they can reach kind of those weekly requirements, or recommended, I guess,
Yeah, that's interesting
physical
because I
activity
thought
level
that
stuff.
you guys would do like, I don't know, implement more physical activity during school times, but it seems like you kind of just did like an after school parent walk, or before school parent walk.
Yeah, I mean, really, what I was doing is I would go out there during recess time, during lunchtime, and I'd set up specific activities, or
Okay.
walking lap for prizes, or different games that they could play.
Yeah.
And I'd bring outside things that they necessarily didn't get to play all the time, to try to get more students engaged and want to be
Yeah.
active during those times, rather than maybe just stand around in a circle and hang out with their friends or something.
Yeah. Now, did you
Um,
have kids that were just like not about it, and you try to like get them to play or do some kind of physical activity, but they just weren't?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be those, kids that don't want to, they don't want to be physically active, or, they
Yeah.
just want to hang out, like, and that's going to happen. But, it's kind of just seeing the difference where, like, hey, if we implement this, can we get more students engaged?
Yeah.
Um, so it was a good opportunity, and it was something that, kind of made you step back and really look at, it's like, hey, this is what this school is doing. This is their schedule. How much opportunity do they really have for physical fitness?
Yeah.
So
Well, what did you think after all that? Just like watching that, like, were you like, kids here aren't really playing around that much? Like, what was your opinion about it?
yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like, hey, if really, it's with with the big part of the kids, it's like, if it's something different, if it's something new, then they'll want to participate. But how realistic is that to, have someone there presenting something every day that's going
Yeah.
to, keep them engaged, keep them wanting to do it? So I think I kind of stepped back from it and said, hey, there's room within, the schedule to provide different opportunities for more physical activity, but realistically, you know, they got to make the most of their resources if they want, to engage all these kids, to keep them active, But I think, if more schools did, like, get parent volunteers to help with different
Yeah.
things, then they could really make a big impact over time. So
Really. Dang. That's cool, man. That's cool. You did a little research project on that. It's pretty cool. Now, so for my final question, this is kind of like the more of the important question of my idea. So was ASU worth it?
yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I mean, going through the experience of being a student athlete, being away from home. So you really have to learn who you are, and you really have to develop into the person you want to be. Um, it's made a big impact on my life. To gain that independence, and then be in a situation where I had to work hard. I had to continue to be try to be the best version of myself, and really get into that balance of, work, um, on school, and athletics as well. I think it's kind of changed my attitude, and changed, kind of my perspective on what hard work can do. And I think I've definitely taken that, um, beyond ASU. And, I've gone through a series of different jobs, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of found my footing in what I'm doing now. But, even on my, path to this current, state of where I am,
Mm-hmm.
I've always learned, like, hey, if I work hard, it's going to pay off. It might not pay off today, it might not pay off tomorrow, but I'm going to eventually see that hard work pay off in the future.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big thing that, really helped me, in my life now. And I continue to be motivated and say, you know what, like, I can do better. So yeah, I definitely think it was a great experience. I'm glad I decided to go there.
Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. Well, Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I think a lot of students are definitely going to learn just from your work ethic and what it takes to be a D1 student. So, yeah, man, I really appreciate your words of wisdom of, being a student athlete and kind of just like displaying that image of, working hard definitely gets like the reward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you have that opportunity, to compete at that level, I'd just say, take advantage of it. Not a lot of people get to do that. It's a very small population, no matter what sport you're doing. Um, but enjoy it. I mean, you got to have that balance. Like I said, ultimately, not many people are going to make it past that D1 level and compete further than that. So
Yeah.
take advantage of it. It's great competition. You really get a chance to push yourself. But ultimately, it opens doors to that academic side where you got to take the most of that opportunity to get that degree, because that's ultimately what you're going to be doing after. So make that important. You always got to remember you're a student before you're an athlete. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you can do it, make the most of it, is what I would say.
Cool. Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you.